You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk and it's it. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion new single, my hater, the big better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million, the devil, that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the third part of What If Deku Meets Incredibles. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of Yellow Pikmin 88 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. While all of this was going on, however, Mr. Incredible was leading the other half of the class towards Syndrome's headquarters, the cover of night hiding them from any patrols. Their route led them to the edge of the island where a rail line was located. There, Mr. Incredible pointed to the rail as a large transport shuttle could be seen approaching their jumping point. "That's our way in." "You mean jump?" Minta asked nervously. I'm not so sure I can get that far." Though a lecherous smile soon crossed his face as his gaze drifted to Momo. "Unless I could maybe get a piggyback ride from Yao." The little pervert was suddenly silenced by a roll of tape wrapping around all below his nose. "You're welcome," Zero muttered, slinging the short hero over his shoulders like a mummified backpack. "Thank you, Zero." Momo smiled just before the shuttle reached them. "Now," Mr. Incredible signaled as the group jumped down towards the shuttle, landing on its roof with a metallic thud which visibly dented it. The guards inside didn't have time to investigate as they were quickly grabbed and flung out by a variety of appendages including a tongue, a shadowy bird monster, a tail and a pair of fleshy cables. "You kids are pretty good." Mr. Incredible praised them as they climbed into the shuttle which carried them along the rail until Syndrome's facility came into view. "Hold on," Shoto spoke up. "This place must have a security checkpoint before the facility." Sure enough, as the shuttle rounded a corner they saw, off the distance, a large security gate with a guard on either side of it. "He's right. Even if we got out before we reach it, the guards will know something's wrong if an empty shuttle shows up." Ribbit. Sue expected. "So what do we do?" Toru questioned as Mr. Incredible thought for a moment. Over at the gate, the guards remained vigilant at their posts when they noticed something small and sparking coming towards them. They looked down in confusion to see a small scrap of metal and wires attached to the rail as it drifted past them. They stared at the oddity until they heard a grunt off in the distance, causing them to raise their guns and stare into the darkness, completely oblivious to the giant shuttle coming down from the heavens and crashing into both them and the gate, flattening all. "And that's how you bypass security without a keycard." Mr. Incredible smirked as he vaulted over the now shorter gate followed closely by the one students. "Employees of the month, ladies and gentlemen." Continuing on foot, the group eventually reached the facility. "Okay, kids, we just need to find a way inside," Mr. Incredible stated, he and the group hiding in the bushes next to the building which was surrounded by guards. "Shouldn't we just ask those nice men with the rifles to let us in?" Kaminari joked, earning a jab in the side from Gyro. "Actually, I think Kaminari is onto something. Let's ask the guards," said Sue, confusing the others. "I've got this." She grinned, pulling her goggle down before she activated her camouflage, turning herself invisible. Something that greatly surprised Bob that he'd now met two invisible girls. He was sure Violet would get along well with them. The group waited patiently while Tsu began to make her way over to the facility and began to crawl up the side of the building to where a guard was standing on the balcony. The frog girl snuck up behind the man before delivering a solid blow to his head which sent him tumbling over the edge and landing on the ground. The surrounding guards immediately ran over to his location, leaving the door completely unguarded. Her plan a success, Tsu bounced her way back to the group before she turned visible again. "Brilliant, Tsu." Toru congratulated her along with the rest of the heroes, the frog hero smiling bashfully at their praise. The group's attention was suddenly drawn to the door, which opened to allow another shuttle to roll out. Before the door could close, however, Minta threw a handful of hairballs at its joints, causing it to stay open. "There's our chance, guys," he hissed, the group not needing to be told twice as they quickly hurried inside before the door pulled itself free of its sticky bonds. Now inside the facility, the heroes found themselves in a maze of silent tunnels, the distant chattering of guards coming from all directions. Mr. Incredible furrowed his brow as he raised his hand to halt the group. Kids, security's only going to get tighter from here on out, and we can't afford to be seen until we've gotten that information. I'm sorry, but I can't take all of you with me. Even with a group this size, we're still too large to risk detection. Then we'll divide the objectives between us, Yaoyorozu proposed. Hagakure, you're our stealthiest members, so you should scout the facility to find the air hangar. Though Tsu's camouflage only lasts so long, so Takoyami, Siro, and Ajiro, you three go with them to subdue any guards that can't be avoided, but stay out of sight. The rest of us will stay with Mr. Incredible. Good plan, Yaoyorozu. Shoto approved as both groups nodded to each other before splitting up. Eventually, Bob led his group to the dining room. Gyro stopped the group for a moment to plug her jack into the wall as she listened. It's empty, she whispered with a thumbs up as they entered the room, and the students were astonished when they saw the towering lava flow wall to their left. There's a secret path hidden behind the lava. I saw Syndrome peering out of it, so I'm certain it leads to the heart of his operation. Mr. Incredible vouched. Whoa. Kaminari stared at the molten waterfall leaning towards Shoto. Think you can freeze that, Todoroki? The dual elemental only shook his head. If it were only a pool, I could freeze it into stone, but this is a natural flow. It'll reheat anything I cool down in a matter of seconds. So how the hell are we supposed to get past it? Minta asked hopelessly. The kids turned their heads to see Mr. Incredible picking up a giant Easter Island head statue in the corner of the room, which he held horizontally over his head. Everyone stand close to me. I'll use this to shield us from the lava. Are you crazy? It'll just melt the rock too and us along with it, Minta shouted. Maybe not. Shoto debated as he joined Mr. Incredible and placed his hand on the statue, which became coated with frost. If we move quickly, I can keep the rock cool long enough for us to pass through. What do you think, Yaomomo? Gyro asked the vice rep, who thought for a moment before using her quirk to produce a large silver sheet. Just for added reinforcement, drape this heat-resistant material over it. That, along with Todoroki's quirk, should buy us enough time to get through. Good thinking, kids, but this thing is actually heavier than I'm making it look, so let's go. Mr. Incredible ushered the group as they made their way towards the lava wall. Okay, here we go, and for the love of God, don't fall behind. The others nodded tensely, Minta trying not to wet himself as Bob got ready to plunge the statue into the flow. But just as he was about to, the lava began to split open. SHT. He almost dropped the statue as he was forced to reel it back, the group scrambling in a panic to get out of sight as Mirage exited the walkway, barely noticing the group hide behind the statue. The woman glanced in their direction for a moment before leaving the room. Quick, the path. Come on. Mr. Incredible pointed as he sprinted into the walkway. Oh, so now we're just booking it? So much for the plan, Kaminari scoffed as he and others hurried after him. However, as they were about halfway there, the walls began to close in on them. CRP, they're gonna press us into grilled hero sandwiches, Minta screamed as he was picked up by Mr. Incredible, who began to run faster, the others right behind them as the walls drew closer. Jump for it, Bob shouted back as he dived out the other side with Minta. Kaminari grabbed Gyro by the hand as he leaped through, dragging her with him. Thanks, she breathed. Hurry, guys, she shouted back as the walls were inches away from crushing Shoto and Momo, who were now forced to run sideways. Shoto, in a last-ditch attempt, blasted ice against both sides of the exit, hardening patches into stone before tackling Momo from behind as they both tumbled through, the closing walls barely catching the back of his shoe. That was way too close. This guy's as reckless as Midoriya, Minta said while checking his hair for any signs of singeing. Midoriya? Does this kid know Izuku? Bob thought, but before he could ask, a row of lights lit up the walkway, leading to a spotlight illuminating a large computer keyboard. Nobody spoke as they approached the console, Mr. Incredible pressing a button which caused a giant screen to light in front of them with the following message: enter password. Well, HT, Gyro muttered. Think you can hot wire that thing, jamming way? Do I look like a hacker to you? Ignoring their bickering, Bob entered the first word that came into his head, Chronos. The password was accepted as the screen changed to a contents with 4 options. Island operations. Finances. Omnidroid metatraining. Supers. A triumphant grin spread across the man's face as the students gathered around to see what secret Syndrome had hidden away about his plot. Bob scrolled down to the Supers option and hit Enter, which took them to a page displaying 2 images. One was a diagram of the Omnidroid, only this one looked a lot different, with a shorter square body and fewer limbs with the name X1 underneath. The other image was a photograph of a superhero named Universal Man with the word Terminated underneath. The photo of the hero then changed to another named Sickwave, also terminated, and the sequence continued SWCH to more heroes confirmed to have been killed by the Omnidroid, with only the occasional few succeeding in destroying the earlier prototypes only to later be killed by an upgraded version, just as Syndrome had done with Mr. Incredible. As the list went on, the heroes could only stare in horror at what was practically a bastardized war memorial of lost heroes, many of which had been friends to Bob as he recognized their names. Everseer terminated by Omnidroid V, X1. Macroburst terminated the Omnidroid V, X1. Macroburst terminated by Omnidroid V, X2. Filing terminated by Omnidroid V, X2. Blazestone terminated by Omnidroid V, X2. Downburst terminated by Omnidroid V, X3. Hypershock terminated the Omnidroid V, X3. Hypershock terminated by Omnidroid V, X4. Apogee terminated by Omnidroid V, X4. Blitzerman terminated by Omnidroid V, X4. Tradewind terminated by Omnidroid V, X4. Vectress terminated by Omnidroid V, X4. Gazerbeam terminated the Omnidroid V, X4. Gazerbeam terminated by Omnidroid V, X5. Stormicide terminated by Omnidroid V, X5. Gamma Jack terminated the Omnidroid V, X5. Gamma Jack terminated by Omnidroid V, X6. This is I can't even. Gyro shook with fear at the multitude of lives lost to the mechanical monstrosity. Kaminari actually took a step back from the overwhelming sense of danger the list of names was giving off. He killed them all, he killed them all. Minto was close to fainting. All these heroes had been pros and yet they were dead. Put down by a soulless robot of all things. The fact that something they practically used as training dummies was the cause of the deaths only escalated the boys' ever-growing fear in the Omnidroid. Momo covered her mouth, her stomach twisting. It's genocide, she whimpered. Not since her encounter with All for One had she felt such horror and disgust. And it was the same for Shoto, who was starting to break out in a sweat, and it only grew worse as he and his peers recognized a particular name which showed up. Mortar terminated by Omnidroid V, X8. The missing pro from Japan, he murmured as his fear began to turn to anger. This villain, just how many lives has he taken? But while all of that had been happening on the island, back in America, Helen had decided to finally get the bottom of her suspicions. Picking up the phone, she'd called in Suricare to inquire about Bob's whereabouts only to learn that he'd been fired. This enlightenment had pushed her growing worries to the edge of certainty, and all it would take to push her over it was in the hands of Edna. So, you don't know where he is? The short woman said before turning to face Helen and offered her a remote which was connected to the homing devices she'd installed in the pair's new suits, including Bob's. Would you like to find out? Mr. Incredible was now searching particular heroes that hadn't shown up on Syndrome's list of victims. He started with Elastigirl and found, much to his relief, that his wife's location was unknown, though he soon found out that Frozon's location was known after searching his name. And upon typing in his own name, he discovered that Syndrome did indeed think he had killed him during their last encounter. We need to get out of here. The guards could come back any time, Kaminari warned. No, we aren't done yet. Mr. Incredible replied firmly as he clicked on Island Operations to learn just what Syndrome was planning to do with the Omnidroid. What he found shook him and the kids to their cores as the steps of Operation Chronos were laid bare. Phase 1. Secure Omnidroid into rocket. Phase 2. Launch rocket towards Metroville. Phase 3. Destroy city with the robot deployed. The final screen displayed a countdown to launch, which was currently at 08, 10, 42 and counting. The heroes stared at the clock as the weight of Syndrome's scheme hit them like a punch to gut from All Might himself. Shoto could barely process the shock of it all. So this is his goal. If that thing reaches America, how many lives will be lost? All those people, Momo whispered, her voice wrought with dread. And there's only 8 hours left for us to stop him, said Kaminari. We have to warn the others. Then what are we waiting for? Minta squeaked as they began to hurry for the exit. But they hadn't gone a yard when suddenly the logo on Mr. Incredible's suit had begun to flash and beep, and seconds after it did so the entire room lit up and an alarm began to wail. Intruder alert! Intruder alert! Intruder alert! Rows of cannons emerged from either side of the room before one of them fired a slime ball at Mr. Incredible, which he blocked with his hand. It was sticky, but unlike the ones the guards used, this one was black as tar and was expanding like a balloon. Unable to shake it off, Bob broke into a sprint as all the cannons opened fire on the group. What are these disgusting things? Gyro screamed as a ball stuck to her leg, making her stumble. These BSTRD are stealing my SH tick, Minta squawked in a mix of anger and horror, one of the tar balls inflating on his back and weighing him down in the process. Shoto attempted to block some that came near him with his fire, but unfortunately it only resulted in the ball exploding into a rain of sticky tar, which proved harder to dodge, the smaller globs that stuck to his arms expanding like the rest. Growing desperate and with a chance of escape slipping away, Momo pressed a button on her earpiece before she shouted into the microphone. This is Creati. Our group's been detected and they have us surrounded. Eraserhead, Ingenium, respond. Yayurazu, this is Ida. Where are you? Tenya's voice blared into Momo's earpiece. There's no time to explain, the robot. Syndrome's going to. Momo's sentence was cut short by a slime ball striking her in the side of her face, the object expanding to cover her mouth. And the others weren't faring well either, as more and more of the sticky ball continued to attach to their bodies, until all of them were immobilized, trapped in their expanding, gelatinous prisons. Before their vision was completely obscured, the last thing they saw were a pair of black boots walking toward them. Man, that black goo's so gross, it's appealing. Oh, I am such an idiot. I let this happen, you know. The new sports car, the getting in shape, the blonde hair, the lies. It turned out that Helen had been the cause of Bob's suit triggering the alarm, as she had used the remote to pinpoint his location. And now that she saw that he was on what by all appearances seemed to be a remote, tropical island, she was now fully convinced that her husband was having an affair, and the poor woman was crying her heart out over it. Edna, on the other hand, was not so tearful, but rather quite disgruntled as she casually brushed the many tissues Helen had gone through into a small incinerator. Yes, he attempts to relive the past, she drawled. Now I'm losing him. What'll I do? What'll I do? Helen sobbed, which seemed to annoy Edna even further as she slowly turned her head to the woman. What are you talking about? She said in disbelief before leaping onto the counter and stomping up to Helen. You are Elastigirl, my god. Pull yourself together, she shouted, emphasizing every word by hitting Helen over the head with a rolled-up newspaper. What will you do? Is this a question? You will show him you remember that he is Mr. Incredible, and you will remind him who you are, she lectured the former superwoman while strutting to the other end of the counter. Well, you don't know where he is. Go, confront the problem. Fight, win, she cheered. And call me when you get back, darling. I enjoy our visits. And so it was that Helen decided to get the bottom of the situation herself. Upon returning home, she immediately put her plan into motion, packing whatever she needed for her journey while giving Violet the rundown. There's lots of leftovers that you can reheat. Make sure Dash does his homework. And both of you, get to bed on time. I should be back tonight. Late. You can be in charge that long, can't you? Violet herself seemed rather confused by the situation. Yeah, but why am I in charge again? To which her mother replied, nothing. Just a little trouble with Daddy. You mean Dad's in trouble, or Dad is the trouble? I mean either he's in trouble, or he's going to be. Helen answered firmly, which didn't settle Violet's suspicions. While she continued packing in her and Bob's room, Helen laid out the suits Edna had made, insisting that she take them. Of course, Helen had no intention on giving them to her children. But unfortunately, she didn't account for how perceptive they could be. Hey, what's that? Where'd you get that, Mom? The woman jumped at the sound of Dash's voice, who she found standing in the open doorway, his eyes on the supersuits. Her first instinct was to shut the door with an outstretched hand, which didn't change much as Dash simply ran to the other side of the house in a second to look through the window. You made a cool outfit? Hey, are those for us? We all get cool outfits. He stared in excitement as Helen shut the blinds only for him to zip back into the room again and snatch his suit away. Dash, you come back here this moment, Helen shouted after him as she went to pick up the phone and dialed a number. But as she was waiting for whoever she called to pick up. What are these? She wheeled around to see Violet had wandered in this time, holding up her suit, which Helen quickly took back moments before Dash sped back in, now wearing his costume. Look, I'm the Dash, the #1 hero, the Dash likes. He grinned while posing in the mirror. Take that off before somebody sees you, Helen demanded. But you're packing one just like it. Are you hiding something? Violet asked, narrowing her eyes. Please, honey, this isn't the time for me to. Yoink! Dash had snatched Violet's suit back while his mother was distracted, handing it back to his sister. Here's yours, Roman 6, it's specially made. Mom, what is going on? Helen ignored the question as she pushed the kids out of the room in a fluster. You're not coming, and I've got a pack, she yelled, slamming the door and sighing. Outside, Violet and Dash looked at each other, trying to make sense of it all. What makes you think it's special? The formed asked. I don't know. But why would Mom try to hide it? Dash suspected before running off. Curious, Violet turned her hand invisible and slowly touched the suit, which vanished completely as she did so. The girl almost dropped it in shock when it happened. Who made this for her and why? And what did it have to do with whatever their mom was up to? Back on the island, Aizawa's group, now without Aizawa, had managed to escape Villians' ambush after their teacher had held them off at the cost of his own capture. And the situation had only gotten more grim when Tenya received a distress call from Momo attempting to relay information her group had found out, only for the call to abruptly cut out, implying that they too had been captured. Despite their losses, the students continued onward in search of shelter in order to conduct a plan to rescue. However, many of their friends had fallen into the enemy's clutches. Mina was running her hands through her pink locks, trying to compose herself. This is bad. This is seriously bad, you guys. They got Mr. Aizawa, and now they've probably got Mr. Incredible and the others. We don't know that for sure, Ishido, Tenya replied, who was in the process of fiddling with his communicator. I'm unable to reach Yaoyorozu. Has anyone else been able to make contact with the other group? No good, Ida. Neither me or Bakugou are getting through to Kaminari. Kirishima shook his head. Hold on. Izuku spoke up, his finger on his earpiece. I think I'm reaching Tsu. Frappi, this is Deku. Do you copy? I read you, Midoriya. The frog girl's voice whispered from the other end. She's there. Izuku confirmed to his friends, much to their relief. Tsu, who are you with right now and where are you? In Syndrome's headquarters with Toru, Takoyami, Ajiro and Siro. Look, this isn't the best time, Midoriya. There are guards running all over the place and somebody tripped an alarm. It must have been someone in Yaoyorozu's group then, Izuku assumed. We received a distress call from her and we think she's been captured. Mr. Aizawa's been taken prisoner too. What? Tsu hissed to stop herself from shouting. We'll try and find out where they're being kept, but we're gonna need backup from you guys. Don't worry, we'll catch up with you as soon as we've set up a base. Just keep a low profile for now. Deku out. Izuku sighed as he turned to his friends. Well, from the sounds of it, at least half of Mr. Incredible's group are still safe. So at least not all our people on the inside have been captured. Tenya reassured. Bakugou groaned, pinching his brow in frustration. But they're still deep in the enemy stronghold, and since the rest of those idiots went and got themselves caught, the guards are gonna be on high alert now. I agree, it's going to be a lot harder getting in there now, Shoji said grimly. Not if the villains think they got everyone who snuck in, Ochako argued. If Tsu and her group stay hidden, they can weaken the security on the inside, and that'll make it easier for us to get in and help them free the others. A good suggestion, but we shouldn't put all our proverbial eggs in the enemy's basket, Tenya cautioned. Once we've established a base, some of us should remain there, while the rest of us go to assist the others in the rescue and eventual commandeering of a ship to escape the island. Then let's get on with it, Bakugou said impatiently, stomping off into the jungle before his shoulder was grabbed by Koda. What's with you, dinosaur? Don't go that way, Koda whispered fearfully, who had a snake curled around his wrist which was hissing to him. She says she can smell death in that direction. The student's breath hitched when he said that. Death? What does the snake mean by that? Mina asked, frightened. Bakugou knitted his brow as he slowly turned back to where he was facing before pulling away the foliage to see what was on the other side and covered his mouth when he saw it. FCK, he gagged. The others also felt their stomachs turn and gasped in horror at what lay before them. A giant X-shaped hole about a foot deep covered the ground amidst a few broken trees, and at the center of the X was a corpse, crushed, broken, and surrounded by a swarm of flies, implying it had been there for a while. Ochako rushed over to a bush as she felt bile bubbling up in her throat. Uraraka, Izuku hurried over to her. Are you okay? He asked, gently rubbing her back as she lifted her pale face while wiping her mouth. Sorry, I'll be all right. It was just the smell, she said reassuringly. Who were they? Mina whimpered, unable to tear her eyes away from the grisly sight. Kirishima stared at the body until he noticed a brick-patterned armband attached to it. Look, doesn't that armband look familiar? Koda lowered the snake, which slithered over to the corpse, and removing the piece of clothing, which she then returned to him. The boy turned the armband over and felt his heart stop as a familiar logo was emblazoned on the other side. Mortar. Izuku identified the body. So this is what happened when he disappeared, Bakugou murmured huskily. And unless we get out of here, the same thing will happen to us, Sato worried. Mon Dieu, Aoyama whispered. We need to keep moving, Shoji spoke up. I see a cave not too far from here. We may be able to rest and hatch a plan there. Hold on to the armband, Koda, Tenya said to him. It's all we can take back to his loved ones. Koda nodded sadly as they moved on, leaving the poor remains of the fallen hero behind. Unbeknownst to any of the heroes, however, a few miles away, a high-speed plane was making its way to the island, piloted by none other than Helen. After calling in a favor to an old friend, the former hero had been able to borrow a commercial jet in order to reach her husband's location. For the past few minutes, the housewife had been attempting to contact the island to request landing permission, but had been receiving no responses, despite the fact that her transmissions were indeed reaching the location. The fact that no one was responding to her did cause her some discomfort. If this was indeed some tropical getaway resort as she had come to believe, then why wouldn't anyone answer? Helen glanced worriedly at the duffel bag sitting next to her, which contained her new hero costume. Could it be her husband was in a different kind of trouble than she thought? Easy, Helen. Easy, easy, girl. You're overreacting. Everything's fine. They're just all getting coffee. At the same time, yeah, she said to herself, though it did little to reassure her as she set the plane to autopilot and retreated to the bathroom with the bag in tow. But it turned out she wasn't overreacting at all. For within Syndrome's headquarters, the quirkless villain was seen approaching a large oval chamber which split open to reveal Bob imprisoned by a suspension system by his limbs, a spherical black cuff on each hand and foot with a trail of magnetic electricity branching it to the frame. Syndrome sauntered up to the captive hero with a chuckle in the back of his throat. You, sir, truly are Mr. Incredible. You know, I was right to idolize you. I always knew you were more than just muscle. But tricking the probe by hiding under the bones of another super? Oh man, I'm still geeking out about it. The man-child laughed with excitement before his smile quickly reduced to a disappointed scowl. And then you had to just go and ruin the ride. Mr. Incredible calling for help. Help me, help me. He pranced about mockingly with a wimpy voice. Lame, 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 lame? All right, who did you contact? He demanded angrily, much to Bob's confusion. Contact? What are you talking about? Syndrome looked to a nearby guard and snapped his fingers. The grunt then turned a dial on a console displaying a voltage meter, which caused the magnetic prison to electrocute Mr. Incredible, who groaned with pain until Syndrome stopped the torture and elaborated further. I am referring to last night at 23:07 hours while you and those meddling kids were snooping around. You sent out a homing signal. I didn't know about a homing device. Bob breathed heavily, which only earned a much higher voltage of shocking, earning a scream from the strong hero this time. And now a government plane is requesting permission to land here. Who did you contact? Syndrome demanded again. I didn't send for a plane. Mr. Incredible replied weakly. Play the transmission, Syndrome groaned, exasperated as Mirage, who was operating a separate console, played out a recorded message which Bob recognized almost instantly. India Golf 9er checking in. VFR on top. Over. Helen. He whispered in horror. His voice didn't go unheard, however. Oh, it seems he does know who these people are. Everyone looked to see Shigaraki enter the room, the young man approaching the captured Mr. Incredible. We can't have them discovering the operation now, can we? A sinister smile creased Syndrome's lips. Definitely not. Perhaps I should send them a little refusal. He suggested, bringing his finger dangerously close to a big red button. It didn't take much for Mr. Incredible to know what would happen if he pressed it. Don't waste your ammo on them. I have something much better in mind. The villain grinned as he pulled out a remote with a speaker at the top. He pressed a button and spoke into the remote. Destroy the plane. Yes, sir. An inhuman voice answered. Bob's eyes widened with dread. What did you just do? Oh, nothing. I just sent a guard dog of mine to tell your little friends to go away. You best hope they can outfly him. Syndrome raised his eyebrows. Well, now I'm curious. Hey, get me a visual on this. He ordered the guard, who brought up a projection. And keep the line open. I want audio for this show. He added to Mirage, who looked uneasy. Shall I make popcorn? Twice poked his head in the doorway, who'd been passing by. Butter or caramel? Back on the jet, Helen had finished changing into her costume. But as she tossed the bag onto what she thought was an empty passenger seat, she heard an "Oh." Violet? The invisible girl revealed herself. It's not my fault. Dash ran away, and I knew I'd get blamed for it. That's not true, her aforementioned brother interrupted, popping up from behind another chair several rows behind Violet. Dash? Helen was shocked again to find another of her children stowed away, but neither of them took notice as they were too busy arguing with each other. I thought he'd try to sneak on the plane, so I came here, and you closed the doors before I could find him, and then you took off. You said, something's up with Mom. We have to find out what. It was your idea. Your idea. 100% all yours, all the time idea. Though she didn't care for their excuses, there was one thing that did stand out to Helen about their being here. Wait a minute. You left Jack alone? Yes, Mom, I'm completely stupid. Violet replied sarcastically. Of course we got a sitter. Do you think I'm totally irresponsible? Thanks a lot. Well, who'd you get? The next few minutes were spent with Helen calling the house to find that Violet and Dash had left their little brother in the care of one of the neighbors, Kari, a friendly but talkative girl around Violet's age. But before Helen could discuss the situation with her any further, she was distracted by a beeping coming from the plane's radar. She hurried back to the cockpit to see the island was within sight, but what really got her attention was what was coming from the island towards the plane, fast. At first she feared it might be a missile when she saw smoke trailing behind it, but it was anything but a missile. Flying straight at them was what could only be described as a monster. It was about half the size of the jet with mud-brown skin, a pair of short reptilian legs sporting huge talons as long as scythes, and in place of its arms were two gigantic bat-like wings with what appeared to be an engine jutting out from between its shoulder blades, the source of the smoke. Its face was unlike anything Helen had ever seen. It was like something out of a horror movie. The top half of its head exposed its brain with a large glaring yellow eye embedded in the center of the gray matter. The lower half of the face looked like a bear trap made from a shiny black metal. The thing looked right at the plane as its metal jaws snapped open, and much to Helen's ever-growing shock, it spoke. Intruder, protect island, destroy plane. It roared out its orders before a deep red glow began to build up behind its giant eye. Helen felt her instincts take hold as she took back control of the plane and dived moments before the beast shot an immense red laser which narrowly missed the plane. Despite the fact she was now scared out of her wits, Helen tried contacting the island again, under the hope that this creature was a form of advanced security. India Golf 999 transmitting in the blind guard. Disengage. Repeat, disengage. She flipped on the seatbelt sign to alert the kids, who immediately ran to the seats nearest to them. But before they could buckle in, the monster took another shot at them, forcing Helen to evade again, sending her children rolling about the cabin in the process. "What is that thing?" Dash yelled in fright as he caught a glimpse of it out the window roaring at them. Disengage. Repeat, disengage. Friendlies. Helen repeated again while she increased the jet's propulsion, only for the creature to activate its mounted engine and catch up with them. It then began to regurgitate before it spat out a large ball of flesh, which began to unwrap itself to reveal a second monster which latched onto the tail of the plane. This one was about a foot or two taller than Bob, and like its predecessor had an exposed brain, only with 3 eyes instead of 1, and its mouth was shaped more like an eagle's beak. Its skin was a dusky blue color with long arms, ending in a pair of scabbed hands which sported 10 sharp extendable claws, long and thin as katanas, which it began to stab the hull with to drag itself along the jet, eventually making its way to the wing. "Mom, there's another one on the plane," Violet screamed as the second monster scrambled across the wing and smashed its fist through the window. Violet leaped back to avoid its blades as she grabbed Dash and held him protectively. "Kids!" Helen screamed in terror, not knowing what to do as the first monster was still hot on their tail, trying to blast them to Kingdom Come. "Wow, where the heck were you keeping these guys?" Syndrome watched the monster from the monitor, a crazed, ecstatic look in his eyes. "You called the big one your guard dog?" Shigaraki responded coolly. "The small one is called a Namu. The big one, however, is an advanced class of one known as a high-end Namu. Genetic experiments created by a subordinate of mine and my old MSTR. Well, color me impressed. I may be a mechanical genius, but bioengineering, I ain't touching that can of worms." Syndrome chuckled, tossing a popcorn kernel in his mouth. "Your minion makes good popcorn, by the way. Twice does have his perks." "No, call them off. I'll do anything," Bob begged desperately. "Too late," Syndrome shrugged. 15 years too late," he added venomously. "Friendlies at 20 miles south-southwest of your position. Angels 10, track east. Disengage." Helen was panicking now as she turned to Violet, who was diving out of the way of the Namu, which had gone back to stabbing the roof. "Roman 6, you have to put a force field around the plane." Violet couldn't believe her ears, despite the madness happening around her. "But you said we weren't supposed to use our powers." "I know what I said. Listen to what I'm saying now. Disengage. Repeat, disengage." She lifted the plane up to avoid hitting the water. The high end wasn't as lucky as it crashed into the churning waves before resurfacing, its engine sputtering, but its wings still beating fiercely as it tried to catch up again, shooting more laser at the plane. Unfortunately, the Namu was still on the attack as it dug its razor fingers into the ceiling of the plane. "Mom?" Dash whimpered in fear before the monster ripped a hole in the hull, oxygen masks springing from their compartments. The young boy cried out in fear as the vacuum from the hole began to drag him towards the Namu, which tried to grab him. "Dash!" Violet panicked as she tried desperately to form a force field, but only managing to make small fragments to block the Namu's attempts to snatch her or Dash. "Violet, you have to form it around the plane," Helen shouted. "Mayday, mayday, India Golf 999 is buddy spiked. Abort, abort. There are children aboard." "Say again, there are children aboard." "Ooh, it gets better," Shigaraki grinned. "No," Bob pleaded. Both Violet and Dash now had their backs to the seats, the Namu smashing Violet's force fields like panes of glass, each one weaker than the last, and the girl growing more and more terrified. Helen, seeing her children helpless, felt something ignite in her she hadn't felt in a long as she SWCH'd the plane back to autopilot on its highest speed and charged straight at the Namu. "Get away from my kids, you monster!" she roared, delivering a solid punch to the Namu, forcing its head out of the hole in the ceiling before she went after it. The winds immediately seized the woman, but she wrapped her limbs around the Namu, which was still hanging onto the plane. The abomination raised one of its hands, preparing to skewer Helen, but instead the woman leaned back and her body billowed out like a parachute on a race car. The Namu choked as it felt the force of the wind pulling it from behind. It dug its claws into the hull, but Helen refused to let go either, the winds growing stronger as the plane picked up speed. The Namu roared in desperation as its claws began to drag, leaving cuts along the hull before it finally came loose, and in the split second it did so. Helen let go and grabbed the edge of the hole, while the Namu was sent flying away from the plane and tumbling into the ocean far below, roaring as it went. "Mom, you did it!" Dash cheered as he saw his mother pull herself back in. "Both of you keep clear of the hole, we have to." Helen's words died on her tongue as she saw the familiar face of the high end as it had managed to catch up with them. She didn't have time to evade as the high end grabbed onto the front of the plane and began to charge up its laser eye, this time more than ever. "Put a field around us now," Helen screamed desperately. "But Mom, I've never done one that big before," Violet replied, her eyes beginning to tear up with fear. "Violet, do it now!" Helen was beyond desperation by now as she spoke into her headset one last time. "Abort, abort, abort." Violet tried to create a force field but found in her state of panic she could barely make a small bubble that lasted only a second. "Abort, abort." The high end glared at them as it prepared to fire. "Die." It snarled, and with that, Helen knew they were out of time as she threw herself over the kids before the high end unleashed its laser. The beam tore right through the plane, cockpit to empennage before the entire craft exploded, the high end flying away as it did and returning to the island. Little did the monster know, however, that thanks to the durability of Edna's suits and from shielding the children with her body, none of the pars had been killed. But they were still falling, as Helen awoke from her brief knockout from the blast to see Violet and Dash screaming in terror as they fell. Thinking fast, she grabbed the both of them and billowed herself again, allowing them to safely drift down towards the sea. "Brace yourselves," she said as they landed in the water. Helen quickly swam over to her panicking children. "Everybody calm down, we're okay. Now, I'll tell you what we're not gonna do. We're not gonna panic, we're not gonna look out." She quickly pushed them all underwater before one of the plane's engines hit the water, narrowly missing them. Violet and Dash swam back to the surface as Helen watched the debris sink into the inky blackness before going to join them, both kids in a panic. "Oh my God, what was that thing?" Violet yelled. We're dead, Dash wailed while trying to stay afloat. "It blew us up. We survived, but we're dead." "Stop it," Helen splashed the both of them to snap them out of it. "We are not gonna die. Now both of you will get a grip. Or so help me, I will ground you for a month, understand?" Back in the interrogation room, Mirage, though horrified by what she'd just witnessed, gave the results to Syndrome. "We have a confirmed hit. The target was destroyed." "Ah, you'll get over it." Syndrome scoffed to Mr. Incredible as he waved his hand dismissively. "I seem to recall you prefer to work alone." "I do enjoy a cruel irony." Shigaraki laughed wickedly along with Syndrome as the pair began to walk away, not noticing Mr. Incredible glaring daggers at the latter as he reeled back his cuffed hands. Mirage, seeing this, pushed Syndrome out of the way, getting herself caught in the strong hero's grasp in the process. "Release me. Now," he thundered in a rage. "Or what?" Syndrome questioned. "I'll crush her," Bob threatened, his arms squeezing Mirage slightly, who winced. "Ooh, that sounds a little dark for you." Syndrome cringed before muttering, "Ah, go ahead." Mirage gasped with shock and disbelief as Mr. Incredible tightened his grip on her harder. "It'll be easy, like breaking a toothpick." Shigaraki chuckled darkly as he removed his hand mask to grin at Mr. Incredible. "Like you have the ball to try. You have no idea what it feels like to kill a person. It's beyond description." "I'm serious, I'll do it." Syndrome found it as amusing as Shigaraki did as he stared Bob in the eye. "Show me." Bob stared back at the villains, who didn't crack their faces, and as they waited, he slowly felt his will give way, and he sighed as he dropped Mirage, who looked at the two of them in shock. "I knew you couldn't do it. Even when you have nothing to lose, you're weak," Syndrome demeaned the broken hero as he and Shigaraki walked away. "And I've outgrown you." Mirage reluctantly followed them, but stopped at the doorway to hear the sound of Bob sobbing over the supposed death of his family, the woman feeling a weight in the pit of her stomach as she left. Back out at sea, Helen looked up at the smoke trail left behind by the high-end's engine. Whatever that thing was, it went back to wherever it came from. That way is our best bet. You want to go toward? To the people that tried to kill us? To that monster? Dash asked in disbelief. If it means land, yes. You expect us to swim there? Violet questioned, to which her mother replied with a calming smile. I expect you to trust me. Back on the island, however, the villains hadn't been the only ones who'd witnessed the attack. After reaching the cave, Izuku and his group had felt the island shake and were shocked when they saw the high end taking off from the island. Was that a Namu? Ochako had said aghast. How the hell did one of those things get here? Bakugou glared at the monster. I don't know. We better check it out, Izuku suggested as he began to walk away from the cave. Not alone, you're not, Tenya stopped him. Don't worry, Ida, I'll go with him, Ochako reassured. I'd better go too. I need to scout the surrounding area for patrols anyway, Shoji said, joining the pair as well. In which case you'll need me to keep you extras from getting caught, said Bakugou, who joined them also. Awa, I knew you cared about your friends, Kirishima grinned. Up yours, shitty hair. Very well, but don't be out too long. We need to put our plan into action as soon as possible, Tenya said promptly. Sure thing, class rep. Ochako saluted him as the four went off to investigate. They eventually made their way towards the shore, finding no guards along the way before they got a good look at what was happening. It was a good distance away from them, but the young heroes were able to see the high end attacking a plane. A plane? Where did that come from? Shoji wondered. And they're in trouble, Ochako worried as they saw the monster firing lasers at the craft. Knowing there was nothing they could to help, the kids could only watch, and their hearts stopped when the high end finally managed to blow the plane to smithereens. Izuku could barely comprehend what he and his friends had just witnessed. How many people had been on that flight? Ochako, her face wrought with horror, asked the group. How could they just? I know they're villains, but whoever was flying that thing knew the island was there, Bakugou scrutinized. Whoever these BSTRD are, they don't want anyone else finding out about this place. So, it stands to reason they'll kill any and all witnesses. Even having been given a reason, it did little to settle the girls' dismay. The only reason we were brought here alive, despite the landing, was for sport then, Shoji verified in disgust. Or more likely as test subjects, Izuku furthered. Mr. Incredible did say Syndrome's robot was designed to kill heroes by analyzing their quirks to exploit their weaknesses. Good thing it doesn't have your brain then, Deku, then it'd probably be unstoppable, Ochako quipped. But still, all those people. We'll avenge them, Izuku declared, glaring at the high end as it returned to the island. We won't let them get away with this. We better get back to the hideout, it's getting dark, Bakugou muttered, his voice grim with repressed anger as he too wanted nothing more than to lay waste to the villains for what they had done. But just as they were about to leave, something caught Izuku's eye. Wait, I see something. Izuku squinted at a tiny object speeding over the horizon towards the island. Bakugou, his hand to his brow, stared as well. What the hell is it? Looks like a raft. Survivors? Ochako wondered. But how could they have survived the explosion? Not to mention the fall. Could they have jumped out before the blast? Wait a minute. Shoji morphed some eyes onto his tentacles as they focused on the strange object. That's not a raft. It's a person. What? The others questioned. It's a woman. She's using some sort of shape-shifting quirk, and she's carrying 2 passengers. They're heading straight this way. Then they are survivors. Come on, we gotta go help them, Izuku said as he ran out towards the shore. Deku, wait for us, Ochako followed after him with the rest close behind. Sure enough, the strange object the group had seen was in fact Helen, who'd shaped her elastic body into a life raft with Violet on her back and Dash acting a motor by kicking his speedy little legs. It took them a while, but they, as Helen and her children finally reached solid ground, she allowed her body to return to its original shape while Dash collapsed onto his back, breathed heavily from all the kicking. What a trooper. I'm so proud of you, Dash. She beamed at her son, who gave her an exhausted smile in return until both their attention was drawn to Violet, who yelped. Roman 6, what is it? Someone's coming, I think the people know we're here. Despite how tired she was, Helen managed to get to her feet and stood in front of the kids before addressing the green-clad stranger approaching them. Not another step, you villain. Unless you want me to beat you into next week, she glowered with her fists up. Izuku raised his hands in defense. No, ma'am, it's okay. I'm not one of them. I'm a hero. A likely story, Rabbit Head, doubted. No, it's true. We saw your plane get blown up. The same thing happened to us. Ochako defended, having caught up along with the others. Well, technically we crash-landed, but why split hairs? Shoji muttered. Helen looked amongst the small group. You're just kids, she said, confused. What are you doing on this island? Trying to find a way to get off it alive, that's what. Bakugou replied. So who the hell are you people? None of them felt inclined to answer, still not sure if they could trust the group despite their young age. But as Izuku looked past Helen's shoulders, he stared at Violet, focusing on her hair and eyes before his own widened in disbelief. Violet? The girl visibly flinched when she heard him say her name, confirming his suspicions, as the boy lowered his mouth guard. Is it really you? Aunt Helen. The other two also grew shocked as Dash asked timidly. Who are you? How do you know our names? It's me. The boy pulled back his hooded mask to reveal his frizzy hair. Izukumidoriya. Zuku? Violet came out from behind Helen to look at him as he nodded his head until after a short silence. Wah! What the ah! Both the teens ran at each other with huge open smiles as they embraced and jumped about on the sand. All the while both the remaining pars and WANA members were staring at them slack-jawed and buggy-eyed. What the? How did you? Where'd you come from? Who cares? It's so great to see you. What is happening? Ochako asked, trying and failing to process the spectacle as Dash had overcome the shock. Zuku, it's you, he cheered, running a few dozen circles around Izuku before jumping onto his back to hug his neck. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? What are you doing here? Hey, what's going on here? Bakugou shouted over the trio, finally breaking up the reunion. Deku, who are these people? How do you know them? Ochako asked, just as confused. Uraraka, Keken, this is Violet, Dash, and their mother, Helen Parr. They're my friends from America. Friends? Bakugou gaped. From America? Ochako spluttered whilst Helen approached Izuku. Izuku? She whispered, reaching out to brush her gloved hand across his hair before pulling him into a hug of her own. It really is you. Look at you, you've grown so big. She beamed, cupping his face and pinching his cheeks dotingly. Midoriya, what is happening here? Shoji interjected. I'll explain later, Izuku replied before addressing the pars. Come with us. We have a hideout not far from here. It's a long story, but we don't have much time. My friends and I need to save our teacher and friends along with Mr. Incredible. Mr. Inker, wait, you mean Dad? Dash questioned. The 4 U.S. students stopped in their tracks as they looked back at the young boy with shocked faces. Dash, we're not supposed to give out our identities, Violet scolded. Relax, Romans 6. Zuku knows who our dad is. Dash chuckled before glancing at Helen, who was also frowning. Right, Mom? He double-checked nervously before the young heroes all shouted together. What? After the unexpected and emotional reunion with the pars, Izuku and company lead the 3 Americans to their makeshift hideout, where Izuku introduced them to his friends while also explaining his acquaintance with them. I can't believe you and your mom were friends with Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl. Midoriya, Kirishima said, slapping Izuku on the back. Just when were you planning on telling us? Well, I didn't know they were heroes, Izuku replied. Plus, it was years ago, and after we lost contact with them, I never thought I'd see them again. We're sorry, sweetie, Helen apologized. We were just as upset after our phone book went missing during the move. How is Inko, by the way? She's doing fine, thanks, and she misses you and Uncle Bob too. As touching as it is to see you reunited with your old friends, Midoriya, now really isn't the time for reminiscing, Ida insisted. You're right. Helen nodded before turning her attention to Violet and Dash. Kids, it looks like your father's in trouble. That's putting it mildly, Mina muttered. And in case you haven't noticed, Mom, we're not doing so hot either. Violet noted. I'm going to find him. That means you're in charge until I get back. Romans 6. What? Dash whined while Violet gave him a smug grin. You heard her. Helen then reached into her pocket before bringing out 3 black eye masks, 2 of which she handed to her children. Put these on. Your identity is your most valuable possession. Protect it, she said to them firmly. And if anything bad happens, use your quirks. But Mom, you said not to. I know what I said, Helen cut Violet off, growing frustrated from repeating herself. She sighed as she thought of how to explain the situation to the siblings. Guys. The Par children looked to Kirishima, who spoke to them, his brow furrowed. I'm not going to pretend to know what it's like having to hide your quirks your whole lives, but you're not in America anymore. He's right, kids. Helen agreed, her children turning their attention back to her. You remember the bad guys on those shows you used to watch on Saturday mornings? Well, these guys aren't like those guys. They won't exercise restraint because you're children. They will kill you if they get the chance. Do not give them that chance. Mom, there's something Romans 6, I'm counting on you to be strong, Helen said firmly before addressing her son. Dash, if anything goes wrong, I want you to run as fast as you can. As fast as I can? Dash beamed in a moment of excitement as Helen ruffled his hair. As fast as you can. She smiled before embracing the both of them. Stay hidden, keep each other safe, and I'll be back by morning. Kirishima grinned as he P&D'd his fist against his palm. Alrighty then let's get to storming this castle. Absolutely not, Helen objected. I'm not about to let you kids go running into this kind of danger. You need to stay here, too. Bakugou raised his eyebrows, an irritated scowl on his face. Excuse me? Who do you think you're talking to? A bunch of nursery brats? You're not the boss of us, lady. Bakugou, show some manners, Ida scolded before he addressed a stunned Helen. I'm sorry, madam, but what my peer is trying to say is that though you may be our elder, you are not our authority figure. Our teacher is, who along with your husband, has been captured by the villains occupying this island. And prior to your arrival, we were in the midst of putting together a rescue plan, along with trying to find a means of escaping this wretched place. He shifted his glasses. So, though I understand that the idea of children engaging these villains may cause you concern, you are a mother. After all, we are no ordinary children, but provisional heroes. As such, we will not hide, nor will we remain here, save for a few of us as acting reserves. We're going to rescue our teacher and friends, and we're more than willing to assist in the saving of your husband as well. Helen looked amongst the group of up-and-coming heroes, all wearing the same determined looks, before she sighed. Sometimes I forget how different the world outside the country is. You're right, I'm not in charge of what you kids choose to do here. But I still don't think you can all go in at once. It's just too risky. I agree, Ida nodded. Which is why only a few of us will accompany you in the infiltration. Though we may not look it, the last battle we were in tired us out. And if we're going to succeed in this endeavor, we need to recuperate. I suggest 3 of us go with Elastigirl. I volunteer. Shoji raised his hand. Mr. Aizawa did tell me to save my energy, so I still have plenty of strength left in me. That, and I have a connection to Shiro and Tokoyami on the inside. As do I, Aoyama volunteered. My long-range attacks should take down any guards before they see us coming, which should thin out their ranks for when the rest of you join us in the counterattack. I better go, too, Sato suggested. If we find any of our friends are injured, I'll be strong enough to carry them to safety. Then it's decided. The 3 of you will infiltrate the facility with Elastigirl, rendezvous with Tsu's group on the inside, and free our captured comrades. When dawn breaks, the rest of us will join you there, and together, we'll commandeer one of Syndrome's aircrafts to escape the island. Ida strategized. He saluted his 3 classmates as they followed Helen out of the cave, though they hadn't gone more than few meters when a voice called out. Mom, Helen turned to see Violet running up to her. Mom, what happened on the plane? I'm sorry. I wanted to help. I mean, when you asked me to. I'm sorry. The girl apologized shamefully as Helen consoled her. It isn't your fault. It wasn't fair for me to suddenly ask so much of you. But things are different now. And doubt is a luxury we can't afford anymore, sweetie. You have more power than you realize. Don't think, and don't worry. If the time comes, you'll know what to do. It's in your BLD. The three boys with her smiled at her words as they carried on, leaving Violet behind to watch them go as she put on her eye mask. Back at the facility, Syndrome and Shigaraki were looking over the Omnidroid, which was being loaded onto a large rocket. So, what happens after it reaches the city? The Decay villain asked. Oh, that's where the show begins. We'll go over that phase of the plan later, Syndrome replied. The point is, Incredible won't be there to stop it. Not that he could. He's not weak, you know. The duo looked around to see Mirage working at one of the consoles with her back to them. What was that? Syndrome questioned. Valuing life is not a weakness, Mirage explained, a hint of resentment in her tone. Oh, hey, look, if you're talking about what happened in the containment unit, I had everything under control, Syndrome defended as he approached the woman. And disregarding it is not a strength. She shot back sharply as Syndrome put his arm around her. I called his bluff, sweetheart, that's all. I knew he wouldn't have it in him to actually. Mirage roughly brushed him off with considerable disgust as she stormed out with a glare. Next time you gamble, bet your own life. Woo, drama, am I right? Syndrome chuckled at Shigaraki, who didn't react. I'll give her a few hours to cool down, she'll be fine. Think I'll go check up on the super bum. Bet I can find a way to replicate that quirk of his. As he left the room as well, Shigaraki narrowed his eyes in the direction Mirage had left as Kirigiri phased in behind him. Keep an eye on that woman. I don't know if we can trust her so much anymore, he said to the warp villain, who nodded obediently before phasing out again. Ugh, where am I? Momo groaned as she opened her eyes, only to find herself surrounded by pitch blackness. What's more, it felt like she was hanging in midair and her hands and feet were restrained. That you, yeah Momo. Gyro, Momo recognized the voice. Guess we're not alone in here after all, Gyro. Kaminari? Before Momo could address the voices of her friends any further, a light began to split through the blackness, making her squint until she found herself suspended in a containment unit just like the one Mr. Incredible was imprisoned in. Momo looked to her left and her right to find Shoto and Mainta were suspended next to her alongside Gyro and Kaminari. The grape hero was still unconscious while Shoto looked amongst his fellow prisoners. Where's Mr. Incredible? He asked. Could he have escaped, maybe? Kaminari hoped. I doubt it. They're probably holding him in another cell, Gyro wagered. You're right about that. The young heroes noticed a guard operating a nearby console. The meathead's in maximum security, seeing as how the boss has it out for him. But I'd be more worried about yourselves right now. What, do you expect us to talk? Shoto glared. No, Scarface, I expect you to scream. The guard replied with a sinister grin as he hit a button, causing the group to be electrocuted, which did indeed yield a scream of pain from Shoto and also awoke Mainta with an even louder cry. Don't worry, we won't kill you yet, the guard assured as he stopped shocking them. After the mission's complete, the boss will put you to work as the next batch of guinea pigs for the Omnidroid to learn from. I doubt you'll last 10 minutes against it, especially after we find a way to copy your teacher's quirk into its arsenal. They got Mr. Aizawa, Mainta said in disbelief as he and the students looked on in horror at the revelation whilst the guard laughed maniacally. Yeah, and we'll get the rest of you soon enough. Unless you're too much to handle, in which case we'll just kill you. But until then, just sit back and suffer. The guard spat as he hit the shock button again. The young heroes screamed in pain as volts of electricity were sent coursing through their bodies, though the guard failed to notice that Kaminari wasn't affected by it. Chargeable looked amongst his friends in horror as the shocking ended and their heads fell forward, gasping with relief. But as he began to process what was happening, his brow furrowed into a glare and he shouted out towards the guard. Hey, is this how you get your sick kicks, you piece of CRP in a skin-tight suit? Shut up. You're gonna make him torture us again, Mainta cried. You call that torture? I've had worse shocks from a Christmas sweater. This guy has one job and he can't even torture a bunch of kids. No wonder villains are such losers. The guard snarled as his grip tightened on the dial, itching to twist it. Oh, that old trick again. like you're gonna get anything different out of it. Shut your mouth, moron, you're gonna get us killed, Gyro yelled at him. This butt couldn't kill a fly. Go on, crank it up, I dare ya. You're gonna regret that, you little punk. The guard spat as he did indeed turn up the voltage to maximum. At least I'll enjoy the pleasure of watching you freaks beg for mercy. Oh, so you do get a kick out of it. Who's the freak now? Kaminari taunted the guard yet again, and that was enough to get him to push the button, which sent the device into a storm of electricity. The prisoners braced for the agony they were certain would follow, Mind to himself screaming like a baby, only to realize that nothing was happening. Confused, they, along with the guard, looked about and gasped when they saw Kaminari engulfed in blue lightning, his hair bristling and a wide smirk on his face. "Is that all you got, punk?" He grinned before he began to release the electricity in his body back into the machine. The control panel began to glitch and spark, the dials spun rapidly, and an overload alarm began to blare and flash. The guard yelped as he tried desperately to get the console back under control, but it was hopeless as Kaminari, his body still glowing, ended his counterattack with a final utterance. Tick, tick, boom. And with that final blast of feedback, the console exploded, sending the guard flying back and off the walkway to his death. Moments later, the electric field vanished, allowing the heroes to land on their feet, their shackles falling off in the process. "Kaminari, that was genius," Momo cheered. "I should have realized it sooner that the device wouldn't affect you. You not only absorbed the attack so that we wouldn't be harmed, but rerouted it back into the machine to overload it. A brilliant strategy." Shoto agreed. "But you needed more power, and you knew the guard would catch on eventually. That's why you taunted him into using the maximum, so you could pull off your attack in one fell swoop." Momo further analyzed. "Which I knew from the start. I was just playing along so the guard wouldn't realize you were fooling him. And never doubted you for a second, buddy," Minta said with a wobbly smile. Even Gyro couldn't help but be impressed by her classmates' out-of-the-blue strategy as she scratched her cheek awkwardly. "Yeah, sorry for doubting you back there, Kaminari. When push comes to shove, you can be pretty smart, so way to go. That was pretty awesome, jamming way." She looked at him with a smile, only to find the electric hero staring into space with a dopey smile and his thumbs up. "Yeah, I tilde." He droned as he jumped up and down, causing Gyro to cover her mouth as her cheeks inflated. "PFFT, no, not this again PFFT, ha ha ha. And he actually looked cool moments ago. What a shame," Shoto commented as the others couldn't help laughing with Gyro. "Never mind that now. We need to regroup with the others and find Mr. Aizawa, along with Mr. Incredible. Let's go," Momo ordered as they hurried out of the cell, Gyro dragging the still short-circuited Kaminari with them. As they went, Momo activated her earpiece. "Ingenium, it's creati. Yayurazu, we lost contact with you and several of the others. We thought you'd been captured." Tenya's voice answered her. "We were, along with Mr. Incredible, but Kaminari freed us, though we don't know where he's being kept." "Well, I'm glad to hear you're all okay. If you call being electrocuted with several thousand volts okay," Gyro muttered irritably. "But listen, you need to know that they have Mr. Aizawa?" Momo asked. "One of the guards let it slip in front of us. We're going to find Sue's group and bust him out." "An astute objective, yes, but I was actually going to tell you that Elastigirl is headed your way, along with Shoji, Aoyama, and Sato." "Elastigirl? She's here?" Minta said incredulously. "What in the world is she doing on the island?" Momo questioned, just as surprised. "It's a long story. Just know that if you see a woman with brown hair in a red suit, she's on our side. Assist her in freeing Mr. Incredible." "Of course. But listen. Syndrome's planning to launch a rocket containing the Omnidroid to attack the city of Metroville. We need to try and stop that launch. I'll inform the others of what you know. We still have time, but right now we need to save the others," said Tenya. "Thanks for the update, Ida. We'll see you as soon we can," Momo replied before hanging up. "Looks like we have another ally in this fight, guys. Maybe this island isn't so bad, after all." Minta grinned at the thought of his American heroine crush. Meanwhile, Helen herself was making her way towards the facility, along with Aoyama, Shoji, and Sato. Having gotten a general layout for the island already, Tentacle stood at the front of the group as his many eyes spotted a nearby pod rail just above them. It leads into a side tunnel of the facility, and there are no cameras, so it's the perfect blind spot for infiltration. Now we just need to find a way up there, Sato said, scratching his head whilst Helen looked to see a pod approaching them from a distance. Hang on, boys, it's gonna be a bumpy ride, she said. Before any of them could ask what she meant, Elastigirl wrapped her legs around the three students and stretched out her arms to grab the pod, which lifted them clean off the ground in the process. With a mighty swing, Helen flung them on top of the pod before hauling herself up as well. Of course, the sudden added weight of the heroes didn't go unnoticed by the guards riding the pod, who poked their heads out, only to be met with Sato and Shoji's fists before they chucked the goons out of the pod and took their seats. As they rode the pod towards the facility, they noticed a large air hangar situated next to the entrance tunnel that was filled with many hovercrafts and manta jets. Bingo! That's our ticket out of here, Shoji noted before the pod entered the tunnel, which carried them past the hangar containing the rocket that was preparing to launch. A rocket? Helen questioned as the Omnidroid was sealed inside the vehicle. They're loading the robot onto it. But why? Sato wondered as the pod continued onward before coming to a stop in a wide-open docking bay full of pods. And as the heroes looked around, they saw several guards staring at them in shock and confusion. Ah, said Shoji. Oh dear, Aoyama muttered. But as one of the guards attempted to reach for an alarm, the French hero shot him from across the bay with his naval laser, which instigated a short but tense battle. The four heroes worked quickly to incapacitate the grunts due in part to Aoyama's laser and Helen's stretchable limbs. After the heroine gave the boys a quick practical lesson on hiding the unconscious bodies, the quartet made their way into one of the facility's corridors. It was at this point that Shoji decided to attempt calling Takoyami. Tsukayomi, this is Tentacle. I'm in the facility with Sugarman, Can't Stop Twinkling, and a new ally as well. I hear you. Shoji, where are you? We just exited a docking bay for those pod cars somewhere in the west side of the building where we entered. I saw an air hangar on the way in with jets in it, so we have a way out when we're done. Excellent. Tsu's also received word from Midoriya that Yayurazu's group were able to escape their imprisonment. We'll all reconvene as soon as possible before attempting to rescue Mr. Aizawa and Mr. Incredible. Helen reacted at the mention of her husband as Shoji hung up before the door next to them opened. A guard walked through and thankfully didn't notice them pressed against either side of the doorframe due to being distracted by a form he was looking over. The three boys silently stepped back through the door and Helen was about to follow them. But as she took a step back, the door suddenly closed shut on one of her legs, trapping both it and the boys on the other side. She gasped silently, the boys looking on in shock as the guard took a keycard off of his belt, which he used to open another door in front of him. Thinking fast, Helen began to crawl after the man, stretching her midsection out in the process as she reached for the card. Just as she was about to grab it, however, the other door shut, this time trapping her stomach and making her retract from the shock. She huffed in annoyance from the state she was in while Shoji and Sato facepalmed. Oh, mon dieu, Aoyama groaned as the guard reached an elevator at the end of the corridor. But as it opened, another guard was revealed inside the lift who spotted Helen from afar. Hey! Elastigirl immediately shot her fist out to strike the guard down and disarm the other, but the man quickly hit the elevator button, slamming the door on Helen's arm, which grasped about blandly until her hand eventually found his face, giving it a solid punch when it did. Back on the other side, another guard was approaching the door where he was surprised to find a leg sticking out of it. He stared at the supposedly disembodied limb in confusion before a locker suddenly opened up and a muscular arm yanked him inside, followed by several thuds before Sato emerged. Sense any more coming, Shoji? He asked as Tentacle and Aoyama appeared from two other lockers. No, it's clear. Now we need to get this door open. But as they looked through the small window at the top, they saw to their horror two guards get knocked off a transporter they were riding by Helen's stretched-out midsection. Picking themselves up, they immediately noticed the superwoman and aimed their guns at her. They're gonna shoot her. Aoyama, blast them, yelled Shoji. I can't get a good aim. I might hit the lady. I'll try breaking it down. Sato began to strike the door with his fists, which did draw the guards' attention to the other door, but one still kept their gun on Helen as they PP the weapon. She began to panic as her trapped arm fumbled blindly in the elevator for the keycard. Before the guard could shoot her, however, a long pink tentacle sprang out of thin air and wrapped around the guard's neck. It yanked him up to slam his head against the ceiling before going after the second guard. What the? Helen stared as the pink tentacle reattached into nothing before Tsu materialized on the ceiling. She hopped down before taking one of the unconscious guard's keycards, which she then used to open the door, trapping Helen's leg. "Tsu," the boys exclaimed as they saw her. "Hey, guys, looks like I made it just in time, Ribbit." The frog girl smiled as she opened the door holding Helen's stomach. "Are you okay, ma'am?" "I am now. Thanks a lot." Helen thanked her as she finally managed to open the elevator door, her arm retracting to her body. "You must be Elastigirl, right? My friends told me you'd be here." "Yes, I'm here to save my husband. Do you know where he is?" "Your husband? Wait, you mean Mr. Incredible?" Tsu said, surprised. "No, I don't, but my friend Toru found a control room nearby while we were investigating. It might have some info on the holding cells." "Then that's our best lead. Show us the way," Helen said as Tsu began to lead the group to their next heading. Meanwhile, back in the cave, the Par children were sitting around the fire with the remaining members of 1A, except for Bakugou, who was keeping watch outside. Since they had some time to wait before dawn, Izuku had taken the opportunity to introduce his classmates to his old friends, as well as catch up with Violet and Dash themselves. "Ha ha ha ha. You actually put a tack on the guy's chair and you weren't even seen on camera? That's priceless, little dude," Kirishima laughed as Dash was proudly telling them about his famous prank. "Kirishima, you shouldn't be encouraging this kind of behavior in the young man. It's pranks like that that lead to youths becoming delinquents," Tenya lectured, chopping his arms wildly. "Oh, lighten up, Ida, it's just a joke." Mina chuckled as she reached over to pinch Dash's cheek, much to his chagrin. "And besides, there's no way this little cutie patity could become a thug." As Dash swatted her doting hand away, he turned to Izuku. "So how'd you get into hero school, Izuku? I thought you were quirkless." Izuku felt his brow sweat as he hurriedly remembered his excuse. "Yeah, turns out I was just a very late bloomer is all." Aside from Bakugou, it had been a long time since anyone had asked him that question. Violet smiled as she spoke to him. "I'm just glad to see you've made more friends since we met you." "Well, that's only 'cause Deku's so easy to get along with." Ochako giggled as Izuku blushed at her compliment. "What did you call him?" Dash queried. "Oh, it's my hero name," Izuku explained before Violet recalled the first time she'd heard it. "Wait, I thought that name was an insult when everyone thought you were quirkless. You said it means useless." "It was," Izuku replied before glancing at Ochako. "But then, when I met your Araka, she thought it meant you can do it. That inspired me to turn my nickname from an insult to a name that means anyone can be a hero. If I recall correctly, it was mainly because your Araka told you the name sounded cute that you allowed her to call you it, Midoriya." Tenya recounted matter-of-factly, causing Izuku's face to light up and a few of the others to chuckle, including the Pars. "So what, is she your girlfriend then, Zuku?" Violet grinned teasingly. "No, I'm not. No, she's not." Both Izuku and Ochako answered simultaneously, looking at each other when they did so before looking away with blushing faces. This only made the others laugh harder at the cute display. "Oh, they're totally into each other," Mina gossiped sinisterly. One time Ochako got so flustered she made herself float up to the ceiling. "Mina," Ochako squeaked, her face redder still. Suffice to say, Dash was more than a little starry-eyed for the group of fledgling heroes. "I know this isn't the time or place for it, but it's so amazing. Meeting all of you, it just makes me wish even more that our family was born in Japan. Not having to be ashamed of our powers, or to have to hide who we are. It's not all blue skies and sunshine, Dash," piped up Mina. "I mean, we can't use our quirks 24/7 everywhere." "She's right. It's illegal to use our powers at certain times in certain places," Tenya explained. "Not only that, but it's against the law to use your quirk without a hero license, even if there's something you could do to help," Kirishima added with knowing looks from Izuku and Tenya. Still, at least you don't have to act like someone you're not or know you can never be. Violet murmured sadly as she felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. I mean, all I wanted to do was protect people. But you stop one playground bully with a force field and bam, suddenly you're labeled a problem child. You're not normal, you're a freak. And what's worse, your whole family gets dragged down with you, and before you know it the government ships you off to another state to cover up the whole mess you made. The only thing I learned about being a hero is don't be one or you're going to jail. The others looked on in shock at the scale of the punishment as Violet furiously rubbed her eyes. Sometimes I wish I was quirkless like them. Then I wouldn't feel so alone. Izuku felt his heart break from the irony his old friend's words had on him, pulling her into a comforting hug as she sobbed. To think this reversed hero society had all but snuffed out her former spunkiness and drive to be a hero. You shouldn't say things like that, Violet. Ochako frowned, drawing the girl's attention. To deny your quirk is to deny part of who you are. Your power is your own and not something to hide out of shame. Izuku smiled at her. And you're not alone anymore. You found us, didn't you? And hey, since you're Midoriya's friend, that makes you our friend too. Kirishima said with a grin along with approving nods from the others. Roman 6. You running in to stop that bully wasn't a bad thing. It was the mark of a true hero. Izuku comforted. You wanna why? When I was ready to give up on trying, I was told that the greatest heroes all have something in common. Their bodies move to help others before they have a chance to think. And that's why you too can become a hero. Violet stared back at her surrogate brother in bewilderment. Who told you that? She asked, the others looking just as eager to know the answer. Your Uncle Toshi. Izuku replied with a grin which puzzled his classmates, but left Violet and Dash stunned, the latter's eyes sparkling with admiration for the young heroes. Man, you guys are so awesome. I don't care what it takes. Somehow I'm going to get into UA when I'm older, and then I'm going to become a pro just like you, 'cause I know you're all going to be as incredible as our dad. The others smiled thankfully. Well, except maybe that blonde guy with the wild hair. What was his name? Kabumo. Bakugou. Kirishima corrected just as the gang noticed a familiar shadow approaching the cave entrance while Dash continued. Yeah, that guy. I mean, out of all of you, he's gotta be the least hero-like. With that bad temper and how he's always yelling at everyone like he wants to bite your head off. Dash tilde? Mina tried to subtly point behind him only for Violet to push her hand down, a smirk forming on her face. I mean, being able to make explosions is pretty cool. But when you pair that with a guy who says he's gonna kill you when you so much as look at him the wrong way, that's a bad sign. And have you seen his eyes? He's got crazy eyes. If looks could kill, we'd all be 6 feet under. He's a psycho, I'm telling you. This guy has the look of a psycho. Dash stopped talking when he noticed the fearful or amused looks on the others' faces as he realized. He's right behind me, isn't he? Oh, good. He was approaching you. Now he's right behind you. The boy looked back to see Bakugou staring down at him, arms folded and frowning. Hey, I was just saying how awesome I think you all are. Dash grinned nervously. Yeah, we psychos are pretty awesome, aren't we? With our crazy eyes and wild hair and all that. Bakugou grinned wickedly, his eyes flashing red. Dash whistled innocently before he zipped away, just as Bakugou made a grab for him. I'm gonna kill you, you little pissant. Get over here. You're only proving his point if you do, Bakugou, Kirishima called out as the heroes watched the angry Pomeranian fruitlessly attempt to catch Dash, much to their amusement or slight concern. Violet rolled her eyes as she went back to her quirk training. Taking her mother's advice, Violet had been trying to get control of her force field by enclosing them around the fire for practice. She was able to hold a bubble around the flames for a few moments, allowing the smoke to build up before releasing it into the air, where she then attempted to catch some of it in another bubble. Dash, having grown bored of quite literally giving Bakugou the runaround, who had also given up trying to catch him for now, picked a burning stick out of the fire as a makeshift torch. Welp, not that this isn't fun, but I'm gonna go take a look around. Izuku stood up as the boy began to saunter off. Hold on, Dash. You shouldn't wander about a place like this. Yeah, didn't you hear? We're not on vacation, Violet scolded. Mom and Dad's lives could be in danger or worse, their marriage. She whispered the last part worriedly. I think you've got those priorities backwards there. Roman 6. Mina muttered and Dash seemed to agree, though not with the same understanding. So the bad guys are trying to destroy Mom and Dad's marriage. Oh, forget it. You're so immature. Violet scoffed. Okay then, I'm off. Mom said to stay hidden. I'm not gonna leave the cave. Sheesh. Dash said exasperated as he wandered off. I'll go with him. Izuku volunteered, following after him until they were walking side by side. So, what is your quirk, Zuku? Izuku pondered for a moment. Well, it's a sort of enhancement quirk. It lets me move faster, jump higher, and hit harder. Cool. Dash marveled, his voice echoing as he spoke, which made the two boys look forward to see a large, pitch-black tunnel in front of them. Cool. Quiet. Izuku hissed, covering his mouth. It might lead into the facility, and we don't want anyone hearing us. He took a few steps forward, examining the opening to see that it was made of metal. Just where did it lead? While this was happening, Tsu was leading the group towards the control room, where upon arriving at the door they found Toru waiting for them. Keep quiet. There are guards inside. The invisible girl whispered. The rest of the team are in the storage room across from it there. She pointed. We'll wait with them until you get the intel on Mr. Aizawa and Mr. Incredible. Then we'll meet up with Yayurazu's group and get out of here. Shoji murmured back as he, Sato, and Aoyama slipped into the room where Shiro, Takoyami, and Ojiro could be seen. Now we just need to get in without raising an alarm. Helen looked around before she spotted an air vent grill on the ceiling. She reached up and pulled the grill away before hoisting herself up and into the vent. Stay here and keep an eye out. We'll be right back. Tsu whispered to Toru before leaping into the vent as well to follow Helen. The pair crawled through before they reached a large open grate hanging over the control room. Tsu nodded to Helen as the super slipped her head through one of the spaces and stretched her neck down to look at the monitors. She scanned over them until finding one that showed a chart displaying holding cell energy output. She noticed the majority of them were putting out low levels of energy, except for 3 cells. Cell #8 was offline. Cell #4 was using a significant level of energy, but #13 was set at the highest level of energy consumption available, which meant only one person required that amount of restraint. Bob, Helen whispered. What was that? One of the guards asked the other as Helen quickly retracted her head. She and Tsu headed back as Toru confirmed the coast was clear before converging with the rest of the group in the storage room. It looks like your teacher is being held in cell block #4, while my husband is in #13. Both unlucky numbers, Takoyami noted. We should update Yayurazu's team on their whereabouts, said Shiro. For all we know, they could be close to them. Since Mr. Aizawa's cell is closer, we should start with him. From what Yamomo told me, Syndrome's planning to experiment on his eyes to upgrade his robot. We can't let that happen. The last thing we need is that robot getting a quirk nullifier to add to its arsenal. Sato worried. That and Mr. Aizawa losing his eyes. There's also that rocket as well. Todoroki told me the villains are going to launch it to attack Metroville with the robot. Ojiro mentioned. Hey, I'm sure we have plenty of time to stop. The Toru was interrupted by a loud rumbling which shook the room. What was that? Back in the cave, however, Izuku and Dash were finding out the answer, as a gigantic torrent of fire began barreling down the tunnel towards them. Run! Izuku screamed as he and Dash made a break for the exit, the latter overtaking him instantly. Guys! The group heard their echoed voices as they saw them approaching, the glow of the fire close behind. What the hell did you do with that torch, brat? Bakugou yelled as the group sprinted from the cave just before the fire blasted out. The young heroes stopped to catch their breath before they looked up to see the rocket launching out of the island's volcano. Please tell me that wasn't the rocket Yayurazu told you about, Ida. Kirishima hoped. We're too late. It's heading for America, and when it lands, the robot gonna destroy the city. Kota said, distressed. No, it's not over yet, Izuku assured. It'll take some time for the weapon to reach its location, so right now, the best thing we can do is stick to the plan. Free Mr. Aizawa and Mr. Incredible, steal a jet and head for the US to stop the Omnidroid. You make it sound easy, Midori, Mina muttered. It's not. But it's the only plan we've got. Ochako removed her finger from her earpiece as she just received a message. Tsu just told me they know where Mr. Aizawa and Mr. Incredible are being held. With luck, they should be freed by the time we catch up with them. And it'll be morning soon, so let's stay put for a little longer. If anything goes wrong, we'll move sooner. Tanya suggested as the group settled amongst the foliage to rest while the class rep kept watch. Fascinating. I never thought I'd be lucky enough to encounter someone with a quirk like yours. Syndrome grinned at the data rolling across the screen he was observing, whilst behind him an examination table could be seen which Aizawa was currently strapped to. The erasure hero gritted his teeth in mixture of anger and discomfort as his bloodshot eyes were being held open by a speculum while a robotic arm, ending in a camera, scanned the organs. It appears that when you use your quirk your eyes emit a type of light. It must be what nullifies the quirks of those you look at. Perhaps if I can replicate the same wavelength as your eyes, I may be able to imitate your quirk's effects. Not as effectively, of course, but close enough to weaken anyone I hit with it. I'll need to perform an extraction to examine the biology of your eyes completely if I want to pull it off, which I do. You're insane, Aizawa hissed, unable to turn his head to glare at the villain. Sure I am. What's your point? Syndrome laughed. But in all seriousness you should be honored. Your power may just pave the way to a greater society in the future. He turned off the monitor as the speculum released Aizawa's eyes. The man gasped with relief as he blinked them furiously as Syndrome approached the table to hang his head over Aizawa's. Don't worry, you won't feel a thing when I get to plucking out those peepers' claws. You know, you'll be dead. Ha ha ha. But we'll get to that later. Right now I need to get to rounding up the rest of those students of yours and picking their brains too. Or their hearts or skin or whatever part of their bodies their quirks come from. Now don't you go away. Syndrome chuckled to himself as he left the helpless hero alone in the cell and sauntered down the corridor, unaware of one of the vents loosening itself open before Elastigirl. Tsu and Toru dropped down from the opening. This is it, Helen whispered as she used the keycard she stole from the guards to open the door. Mr. Aizawa, Tsu and Toru cried as they ran over to their teacher. Asui. Hagakure. Aizawa looked past the girls to see Helen. Who are you? Helen Parr. You may know me better as Elastigirl. The heroine introduced herself as Tsu and Toru went about releasing Aizawa from his restraints. I hazard to guess that you're looking for Mr. Incredible, he assumed. He's her husband, sir, Toru answered, and their kids are here too. Kids? Aizawa repeated in surprise. It's a long story, Mr. Aizawa, but there's no time to explain. Ribbit, Tsu croaked. The Omnidroid's been launched off the island and it's on its way to America to destroy Metroville. DMN it all, Aizawa cursed. You two rendezvous with your classmates. Elastigirl and I will focus on freeing Mr. Incredible. Then we're getting off this island and stopping that robot. Yes, sir? The girls nodded, but as they left the room a battalion of guards rounded the corner. He's escaped. Alert Sin! The guards were suddenly encased in ice which shot them from the left as Shoto emerged from the corridor along with Momo, Gyro, Kaminari and Mainta. Mr. Aizawa, Momo beamed as the group hurried over. Thank goodness you're okay. Good to see you haven't lost your eyes, sir? Shoto smiled. Indeed, Todoroki. And I'm glad to see you and your peers were able to escape yourselves. You can thank Kaminari for that. Gyro, strong as it is to believe. She smirked, earning a nudge from the electric hero. Helen smiled at the reunion before she heard what sounded like breathe. She looked down to see Mainta staring up at her, his face glowing. Are you all right, kiddo? She asked, confused. Elastigirl Tilda. The grape hero murmured in awe, a drop of BLD emerging from his nose. It's really her Tilda. He's, a big fan, Ribbit. Tsu cringed as she dragged Mainta back by his scarf, the boy reaching out longingly as she did so. Oh, well, let's save the autographs for later. Helen chuckled whilst the students grinned awkwardly, wanting to spare Helen from the ugly, ugly truth behind Mainta's admiration. You kids meet up with the others. We'll find you after we free Mr. Incredible, Aizawa ordered. And for the love of God, don't get caught again. We'll try, sir. Kaminari laughed as the teams split off in different directions. Man, I can't believe we just met another American pro on the same day. The years have certainly been kinder to her than Mr. Incredible. Am I right, fellas? He joked. Thick tilde. She's grown so thick tilde. Minta drooled, causing the girls to hit him on the head in disgust. True to Tenya's word, morning did indeed come swiftly as the once dark jungle was now bathed in the sun's rays. Hey, extras, wake the hell up, Bakugou, who had taken up watch from Tenya, yelled, causing the group to abruptly awake, Dash leaping back in revulsion as he'd found himself curled up next to Violet. Well, when you don't have an alarm clock, right? Kirishima jabbed while the others groaned and rubbed the sleep from their eyes. But just then, Dash heard a strange voice from above. Identification, please. He looked up to see a blue bird perched on a branch. Hey, guys, he tugged at Izuku's sleeve. Look, that bird can talk. A bird? Mina queried as the others looked at the strange avian. Voice key incorrect. It spoke in an automated voice. Voice key? Said Shoji, confused. Voice key incorrect. Wait a second. Just as Violet began to realize something was wrong, the bird was suddenly knocked out of the tree by a large rock that had been thrown at it by, of all people, Koda. Koda, what the hell, man? Kirishima gaped. It's a fake. The animal whisperer pointed as the group looked at the bird, which was revealed to be a robot, now a twitching, broken mess of sparking wires and a croaking voice box. That was a close one. We almost raised an alarm. Ochako sighed with relief. Well, now that that's been taken care of, let's move. The others are waiting for us. Tenya rallied the group as they began to head in the direction of the facility. But as they ran through the jungle, they came across a rather unexpected sight. Out of the bushes stumbled a familiar red-clad hero with blonde hair. Dad, Violet and Dash cried at the sight of their father, who turned to look at them, just as surprised as they were. Kids, I've been looking all over for you, he said as the two ran to hug him. Mr. Incredible, how did you escape? Tenya asked. It was a narrow getaway, but I managed to break out before the villains could recapture me. Class 1 looked at the happy reunion with relief. But for some reason Izuku felt unnerved. He wasn't wearing his hood and mouth guard this time, so why wasn't Bob surprised to see his face? Uncle Bob. He spoke up, noting it took a moment for the man to realize he was talking to him. Yeah, kid? It couldn't be, could it? He had to be certain. Where's Aunt Helen? Helen? Pow? Izuku immediately shot an air blast from his wrist at Bob, sending him flying away from Dash and Violet and hitting a tree. Midoriya, Tenya gasped. Zuku, what did you do? Dash screamed. That's not your dad. Izuku snarled as Bob began to shakily get to his feet. Since when does he not know his own wife's name? The others looked confused before they heard a sinister snigger coming from the supposed Mr. Incredible. You know me so well, don't you, Izuku? His voice now sounded warped, like it was mixed with another, and as he turned around to face them, the Par children screamed when saw half of his face and shoulder had melted off, revealing toga underneath. And that's why I love you, she grinned madly, her disguise turning to mush as she drew her weapons. Who are you? Why did you look like our dad? Dash questioned, still shaken by what he'd seen. She's a villain named Toga. Izuku identified her. She can shapeshift into anyone whose BLD she's ingested. BLD? Violet paled. Then is our dad. No, he's alive. For now, at least. Toga giggled. He actually thinks you and your mommy are dead. Imagine how he'll react when he finds out you're alive, only to learn you've died twice. And that's my cue. Wifey! Everyone looked to see Twice flip down from a tree and land beside Toga, the dastardly duo striking a pose. You kids miss your old man? Well, I can make you a better one. The young heroes looked on in shock as Twice began to duplicate himself, before those duplicates began to transform until 4 Mr. Incredibles were standing with the villains, ready to attack. Dash, remember what Mom said. Violet whispered to her brother, who looked puzzled as he was still in shock. Toga held up a communicator to her mouth before speaking into it. We found them. Come and join us if you want. Moments after she said this, alarms began to blare over the island. CRP, now we're in trouble. Kirishima cursed as several guards were seen flying towards their location in their hovercrafts. Dash, run, Violet prompted as she turned invisible. What? Run. Oh yeah. Dash remembered before he zipped off, running right between Toga and Twice. Whoa, he's the fastest thing alive, the latter said in amazement. We're too slow. Get the boy. One of the guards flew after Dash with a couple more guards behind him in their hovercrafts. Ida, Izuku called out. I'm on it, Tenyo replied as he followed in hot pursuit, his armor protecting him from the knives Toga threw at him. Everyone scatter, we can't let them catch us again, Kirishima shouted as the remaining heroes split off in different directions. Don't let him get away, I'll give him a 10-second head start, Twice yelled as he went after Bakugou and Koda with one of his incredible clones. Toga spotted Izuku and Ochako making a break for the clearing and was about to chase after them when something invisible tripped her up. What the? Nice one, Violet, Ochako grinned as she and Izuku made their escape, though not without one of Twice's clones following them. You'll never take us alive, though I'd prefer if you did. Mina shot globs of acid at the guards' weapons which melted the barrels before spraying more on the ground, allowing herself and Kirishima to make it out. Call in illusion. We're gonna need backup for this lot. Toga ordered the remaining guards as she looked over her shoulder. Now where's my new friend hiding? Back in the facility, the doors of Bob's containment cell opened as a figure approached the imprisoned, broken hero. They pressed a button on the control console, causing the electric field to deactivate and release Mr. Incredible from his shackles. But his savior wasn't Helen or even Aizawa, but Mirage, who knelt down next to Bob, who was on his knees. You have to hurry. There isn't much time. She spoke before a hand shot up and grabbed her throat. No. Bob replied, his voice low and rank with rage as he lifted the woman off the ground. In fact, there's no time at all. Wait, please. Mirage tried to explain through the choking. Why are you here? How can you possibly bring me lower? What more can you take away from me? Your family survived the crash. They're here, on the island. They're alive, Bob murmured in shock before letting Mirage drop to the ground to regain her breath. The news of his family's survival gave new strength to his once broken spirit as he helped Mirage to her feet. But before he could even thank her, a sinister voice sounded from the doorway. So, you've decided to betray us, have you? How disappointing. The pair looked to see Kurogiri standing before them. It seems Shigaraki's suspicion of you was warranted after you stormed out. Your resolve isn't nearly as strong as Illusion's is. Mirage yelped as a portal opened up beneath her feet, which she fell swiftly through before emerging from another next to the villain who seized her. Let her go, Mr. Incredible demanded as he advanced toward Kurogiri, who then conjured another portal, a Namu stepping through it as he did, bearing 4 muscular arms and a spiked shell on its back. I think not. Anyone who betrays the League of Villains shall bear the penalty of death. Kurogiri droned as he handed Mirage to the Namu, which lifted her towards its open mouth of fangs. Besides, why should you care if she lives or dies? After all, were it not for this, so you and your family never would have wound up here, or any past heroes for that matter. Do you really want to save her? This woman with BLD on her hands. Go. The Villains was surprised to hear Mirage say, who despite the tears of guilt running from her eyes glared at the Villains with unyielding resolve. Forget about me. Save your family and stop Syndrome. After all I've done wrong in my life, this is what I deserve. How repentant, Mirage, yet utterly pointless, Kurogiri said as he raised his hand to give the order to the Namu. But before he could, an elastic arm shot out and wrapped around his metal collar. What? The warp villain was stunned as he was flung him against the wall, the Namu turning its head in his direction, giving Mr. Incredible the opening he needed to charge forward and deliver a solid punch to it, the monster dropping Mirage in the process as it was sent flying off the walkway. Kurogiri looked up to see Elastigirl and Eraserhead standing over him, the latter glaring at him with his glowing eyes. You? How did you escape? The villain cursed as he was pinned under the Erasure hero's hold. Syndrome really underestimates my students, Aizawa replied, and that will be his undoing. Honey, Helen looked to see Bob, who had helped Mirage to her feet. You must be Mrs. Inker. The woman was knocked down once more by Helen's fist, which Bob caught in his hand. She was helping me escape, he explained. No, that's what I was doing, you lousy, lying, unfaithful Cree, Helen spouted angrily before Bob literally reeled her into his arms to embrace her joyfully. How could I ever betray the perfect woman? Oh, you're talking about me? Helen snorted, but her glare fell when she saw tears falling from Bob's eyes as he hugged her tight. I thought you were dead, he whispered. Are the kids all right? Helen pulled back from his embrace to caress his cheek. Don't worry. They're safe with those hero students. No, they're in trouble. Mirage spoke up, back on her feet again. What? They were spotted by one of Shigaraki's underlings. Security's been sent into the jungle. Oh great, now our kids are in danger, Helen said, exasperated. Well, why did you bring them in the first place? Bob questioned. I didn't. They stowed away. And I don't think you're striking the proper tone. But before the couple could leave to go and find their children, a roar sounded from beneath them, and moments later the Namu came leaping up from below and landed on the walkway. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that thing, Bob said. Namu, Kurogiri shouted as the abomination charged towards the trapped villain, forcing Aizawa to jump back as the Namu struck the ground where he once was, sending a cloud of dust into his face in the process. DMN, Aizawa cursed as the dust forced him to blink, giving Kurogiri access to his quirk again. This isn't over. Heroes, kill them, he ordered as he warped away, leaving the Namu behind. Well, this just got more complicated. Looks like your family reunion will have to wait, Aizawa muttered as the three heroes faced off against the monster, Mirage taking the opportunity to slip away. The Namu roared as it charged towards the trio. Helen slipped under its legs as it attempted to grab her before coming up from behind it and wrapping her arms tightly around its own, binding them to its sides. The Namu tried to pull itself free, which proved fruitless as its arms only stretched against Helen's. As Aizawa watched the heroes trying to subdue the Namu, he looked towards the empty containment unit that once held Mr. Incredible, the wheels in his head beginning to turn. Incredible, I have an idea, he called Bob over before. We're short on time and we can't afford to waste it here. These gnomes don't go down easy, so let's trap it. He gestured to the empty prison, and Bob soon realized what he was planning before calling out to his wife. Honey, let's give him the slingshot, he suggested while pointing at the containment unit. Helen quickly put the pieces together as her legs stretched out to tie around the railings of the walkway, as Bob charged towards the Namu with his fist reeled back before delivering a mighty punch which sent it flying back. But instead of crashing into the wall, it stopped in mid-air as Helen's body stretched out before retracting, sending the Namu flying right back towards Mr. Incredible, who threw another punch at its face, slingshotting the monster back again. They repeated the process several times until the Namu began to grow dazed from the blows to its brain. As it came flying back in for the fifth punch, however, Helen unraveled herself from its forearms, allowing Bob and Aizawa to slap a cuff over each one. And with one final punch, Bob sent the Namu hurtling towards the open containment unit, moments before Aizawa slammed his fist on the controls. The magnetic field activated instantly as a beam of electricity shot out to each of the cuffs, which dragged the Namu into the unit, leaving the monster dangling pathetically in the field, its legs kicking furious at the air as it roared. Okay, big, dumb and tone deaf. Why don't you take a little nap? Bob grinned as he pressed another button which closed the unit's walls around the trapped Namu, muffling its enraged growls. Bob laughed proudly at their success. Just like old times, right, honey? He smiled at Helen, who was frowning at him. Don't think for a second you're off the hook, mister. You have a hell of a lot of explaining to do before I even consider not banishing you to the couch for life. You can settle your marital concerns later, Aizawa interjected with a deadpan face. Right now, we need to find the kids and get off this goddamn island. Then let's go already. I just hope they're all right, Helen worried. If they're with my students, you have nothing to fear, Aizawa reassured, his face cracking a rare, albeit tiny smile. Those kids are the craziest, most stubborn bunch of misfits I've ever taught, and they'll go to hell and back to protect each other. Over on Team Momo's side, the group were fighting their way through the facility, causing havoc everywhere they went. Countless unconscious bodies of Syndrome's guards littered the ground, walls, and even some were stuck to the ceiling with Mainta's hairball. So what's the plan, Yaoyorozu? Shoto asked, removing his hand from the latest guard he'd frozen to the wall. Do we meet up with the others first or steal a jet? It's not like any of us can fly. Man, Kaminari argued. But there's always a chance the villains could sabotage any jets they do have before we can steal one. Tsu cautioned. You really think they'd break their own vehicles, Tsu? Gyro wondered. If it meant keeping us from escaping, I wouldn't put it past them. Shoji agreed with Tsu. Perhaps we should split up again. Some of us could commandeer a craft and guard it while the rest round up the rest of the team. Or how about this? You don't get the aircraft and you all become lab rats. The gang looked behind themselves seconds before a torrent of blue flames shot towards them, giving Shoto Barley a second to throw up an ice wall. The barrier and the wall of the facility exploded as a result, leaving the kids disoriented but unharmed on the ground from the blast. The smoke soon cleared to reveal Dabai approaching them, and with him was Spinner. Nice try, brats, but nobody's going anywhere. The gecko villain pointed while brandishing his sword. The code of the Great Stain will decide whether you live or die. The young heroes stared down the two villains as they got to their feet and prepared to fight. Let's find out. Shades of green and brown blurred past Dash as he ran aimlessly through the jungle, hoping to lose the pursuing guards, his heart racing as fast as his legs. But not too far behind, the hovercraft's Tenya was running as well in an attempt to catch up with Dash. The teen was already using his engines and could barely make out the boy off in the distance. He's as fast as Gran Torino. I can't even begin to imagine what his speed will be when he's my age, he thought. I have to catch up with him before the villains do. Recipro blast! The mufflers on his legs roared into life as Tenya shot off in a burst of acceleration. The sound of the sonic boom caused Dash to turn his head to look back, which left him unable to see the fog of mosquitoes swarming in his path, which he proceeded to plow straight through, the insects smashing over his face like, well, bugs on a windshield. The boy tumbled to the ground as he desperately tried to wipe/spit/claw the dead insects off his face, which allowed the guards to catch up with him as they prepared to shoot him from their hovercrafts. Dash! Tenya snatched Dash off the ground as the guards opened fire on them, the bullets ricocheting off his armor. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for the save, Dash replied. You can put me down now. Tenya complied as he let go, Dash literally hitting the ground running. The two heroes sped on, side by side, until Dash noticed Tenya was beginning to lag behind him. Hey, you're slowing down. My recipro burst only lasts 10 seconds, and my normal speed can't keep up with you. I have a backup technique, but I need time to prepare it. Go on ahead and don't look back. Leave those villains to me. Dash didn't like the idea of leaving Tenya behind, but he knew the fellow speedster could handle himself. Okay, but you better catch up, he said as Ida stopped and turned to face the approaching hovercrafts. You won't lay a scratch on this child, you fiends. Have at you, he declared as he leapt into the air towards the guards, who looked up as he soared over them before kicking one of them strong in the head, knocking the goon out instantly. His vehicle careened off course before smashing into the other one, causing both to crash. Tenya grinned at his success, but it was soon short-lived as two more crafts came flying in, forcing him to duck as they narrowly missed chopping his head off with their rotors. DMN, they just keep coming, he cursed as he checked his mufflers, which had just about been cooled down by his suit. Yes, I'm on my way. Dash, he said as his engines reignited with renewed vigor. Recipro extend. At Dash's end, the boy was currently running across a patch of desert filled with boulders as the guards continued to chase him across the island. One was getting dangerously close behind him, the wind from its blades ticking the back of Dash's neck before it was suddenly struck down by a large rock. What they? Dash almost stopped running before he heard. I said don't look back, just keep running. Tenya was revealed to have been the one who kicked the rock at the vehicle as he booted another at the hovercrafts, who severed to avoid his improvised long-range attacks. They turned around to fire on Ingenium as he easily dodged their bullets with his advanced speed before sliding under the vehicles to catch up with Dash as they passed back into the jungle. That was amazing. You kicked those rocks like they were footballs, Dash praised. Thank you, though if I wasn't wearing this armor I'd have broken my toes. Tenya joked before he noticed light coming through the trees and just beyond that, a cliff. Watch out! he yelled as he skidded to a stop. Dash wasn't so alert as he noticed the cliff too late and ran straight off the edge. Dash! The boy screamed as he fell before he suddenly landed on a passing hovercraft beneath him. The guard quickly noticed his uninvited passenger and tried to punch, only for Dash to swiftly dodge his attack before striking back with a punch of his own, laughing at his advanced agility. Dash began to flawlessly dodge the guard's attacks while striking him back with a flow of rapid punches, even managing to knock the man's visor off. But as he readied for the next attack, something drew his attention away from the guard, which left him open to being punched off the craft. Unfortunately for the guard, the thing that had distracted Dash was the cliff, which the hovercraft immediately smashed into in a fiery explosion. As Dash fell into the canopy below, he bounced off several branches before managing to grab onto a vine to stop his fall. He opened his eyes to find himself a foot off the ground as he touched down safely. "I'm alive. Yahoo!" he cheered, but his celebration was shortly lived as more guards happened to be close by, who were drawn to the sound of his whooping. He quickly took off as the guards began to chase again before he took a leap off a small cliff and grabbed onto a nearby palm tree to slow his fall. The tree bent under his weight before Dash let go, allowing the tree to spring back towards the guards. One craft sliced through the tree while the other exploded against the trunk. The first vehicle continued to pursue Dash, but due to the tight foliage surrounding them, the rotors began to break against the trees, causing the vehicle to crash into the ground, mangling itself into a ball of broken scrap metal which almost crushed Dash, who narrowly escaped it. But as he continued to run, he realized two more hovercrafts had managed to catch up to him and were now on both his sides. But why weren't they trying to block his way forward? Dash looked ahead in confusion before he realized why the guards were blocking his sides, as straight ahead of him was a huge lagoon. Dash gasped and closed his eyes as he prepared to plunge into the cold seawater. But nothing happened. He opened his eyes and looked down, to find himself running on water. He stared at the marvel for a few seconds before he chortled and continued to run with the shocked guards following after. And they weren't the only ones who were astonished, as back on the shore Tenya had managed to catch up after finding a way down the cliff. Is he running on water? He has to be going 30 meters per second. That's faster than Gran Torino, he watched in amazement. I'm sure my Recipro Turbo could make me that fast. But with this heavy armor I'd sink like a rock. Ingenium wondered what to do, before he looked up at the many sea stacks and arches in the lagoon, which gave the young man an idea. As Dash skimmed across the surface, the guards attempted to blow him out of the water with their guns, though he easily managed to dodge their bullets. One guard aimed for an arch he was about to pass under, intending to bring the rocks down on him, when a large shadow passed over him. The guard looked to his left and cried out as one of the stacks toppled onto his craft and smashed him into the water. Dash momentarily looked back to see Tenya leaping from rock to rock as he kicked another stack down to try and block the guards. "What did I say?" he said to Dash, who grinned back at him. "You said run," he replied as he sped into a tunnel followed by two of the crafts that dodged Tenya's attacks. But one of them chose to go above the cliff instead of into the tunnel. As Dash sped through it, he spotted the guard behind him before doing a loop around the ceiling of the cave and getting behind the guard. He quickly headed back to the entrance, but just before he reached it, the other guard revealed himself. Dash skidded on the water and ran back only to see the first guard coming back towards him. He scurried back and forth on the water a few times as the vehicles closed in on him. But as he finally came to a standstill, he immediately sank into the water moments before the two vehicles collided in a tremendous explosion, which fortunately didn't make it below the water. Dash then swam out of the tunnel and gasped as he broke the surface of the lagoon. Though he had grown tired from all the running, he managed to struggle towards the shore and collapsed against a rock to catch his breath. "My family's always prided itself on its speed, but I'd say you've left the Ida name in the dust, young par." Dash looked up to see Tenya smiling down at him, holding his hand out, which Dash gratefully took, allowing him to pull him out of the water. "You're pretty fast too, Tenya." Dash smiled. "Thanks a lot for the help." "What are heroes for?" Ingenium asked rhetorically. "But we cannot waver here. Your sister and my classmates are likely still fighting for their lives. Not to mention your parents must be worried sick. We have to move quickly." "Haven't we been doing that for the past few minutes?" Dash laughed as Ida chopped his arms furiously. This is no time for jokes, we're in a crisis here. Dash continued to laugh at his gesture as they recovered, unaware of a certain hand-wearing villain watching them from afar. While that had been going on, however, more fights were breaking out all over the jungle. You made a big mistake coming after me, you Deadpool ripoff. Bakugou glared at Twice, who was now facing off against him, and Koda with his two incredible clones. Hey, that's my father you're talking about. Or was he my great-great-uncle's former roommate? With Kirishima and Mina, the two horn buddies had managed to get away from the guards thanks to the latter's acid trap. But they soon found themselves a new adversary as a squad of berserker guards converged on their location, led by none other than Illusion. I've had it up to here with you, you brats. This time none of you will escape me, he snarled, pulling out his tonfas. Yeah, well, this time you won't catch us off guard, Kirishima said back as he hardened his arms and Mina coated hers in acid. But on Izuku and Ochako's end, their fight was looking to be the worst of them all, as one of Twice's Mr. Incredible clones was chasing after the pair. The duplicate ran out into the clearing to find only Uravity waiting for him. Clonecredible lunged at Ochako with a punch at the ready, the girl leaping away to avoid his swing. She then slapped a nearby boulder before hurling it towards the copy, who shattered it into pebbles with his fist. It's gonna take more than a rock to stop me, little girl, he taunted while Ochako stared him down defiantly. But rather than attack, she put her fingers together. Release, Clonecredible looked confused as nothing appeared to happen, when he began to hear a voice from above, growing louder by the second. Sma-osh, the clone looked up to be met in the face with Izuku's glowing boot as he delivered a ferocious overhead kick from above, which completely obliterated his head in a splatter of goo. The clone teetered around for a few seconds before collapsing and dissolving into a puddle. Bam, nice one, Deku. Ochako grinned at Izuku with a thumbs up and a wink as he rubbed the back of his head bashfully. Thanks. Your plan worked brilliantly, Uraraka. He smiled as the two bumped fists. Still, at least we know how to deal with League of Villains, Ochako said. These island guys, on the other hand, they're unpredictable, and his flunkies can give us trouble. Then Syndrome must be able to. Izuku raised his eyebrows as Ochako was suddenly staring up at something with a shocked look on her face. Izuku turned around to see and gasped at who it was. Oh ho ho, no, don't mind me. By all means, give me some ideas, suggested Syndrome with a sinister sneer. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 4. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Yellow Pikmin 88 on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.